what I'm seeing is like 50 for every 10 registrants, we usually have 5 to 7 actually show up. So it's a very interesting number. This is about what I expected, and I'm so pleased that you all would join me today. I'm Chris Daniel. I'm faculty PD, I don't know, manager, administrator. I don't know what HR calls me, but I try to help get faculty and staff the training they need to be more effective and make learning better in online courses and maybe a little bit beyond. So it's really my pleasure. Let me share my screen here. Some of you I know well and a long time, and others I've not made your acquaintance yet. So let me admit Brian Clark, he's coming in. Can everybody see the PowerPoint presentation front and center on the Zoom screen now? Let me just do a couple more things, get the chat up so that I can see the chat window and get the participants list in case I need to admit somebody. So this is group management, and I consider this little session, I hope it's conversational. Stop me if you have a question, because it's really about you all. I've worked in groups, so I don't need the information. I want to help you all. And also consider it sort of like your uncle souped up 70s Camaro. We're going to go from 0 to 60 pretty quick, but we can always put those brakes or downshift into a lower gear if we need to. I just want to show all the major essential features from soup to nuts in just as quick a time period as I can, but I don't want to neglect you all. So just let me know what you all need, and let this be a continuing conversation. I want to help you all get the help you need. I don't want to burden faculty either. Like if you're in an e-campus course over here in Commonwealth where we're all managed, it's not necessarily your job to know the inner workings of every single feature. Don't put that stress on yourself. Maybe jot down what an idea or something you think is useful, and then explore that with your instructional designer. Give me a call IT, and then figure out how you want to implement that in your course. To me, it's drinking from a fire hose or fire hydrant really quickly, and I don't want it to be about that. So you don't have to take down every single step. Know that somebody will help you. So these are just the essential aspects of what I think we'll cover, maybe, hopefully, why groups and the tools inside each group and the different kinds of groups you can create. They're not all necessarily created equal. How we can use Excel to leverage some of the power of Excel to manage groups and get a nice roster in your class, which is sometimes kind of hard to come by if you care about groups featuring into that. We'll look at how to manage all users within all group sets, and then how to use smart views, which is a filtration mechanism of the grade center, and then how to manage group sets or collections of groups. And in terms of sort of entry level to more advanced level, this is sort of my mind map. Managing single groups is a little less complicated than doing things like adaptive release and allowing students to see content depending on what their group membership has to be. This is a roadmap, or it's not a roadmap, it's a mall map. You don't have to be doing high level features to be effective. Like, that's why I don't like Bloom's taxonomy, because it really is not, I mean, I like it, but Bloom's taxonomy was never really meant to be a pyramid. Not everybody should be at the top of the pyramid. It's if you are at the top of the pyramid, well, then great. And the same for this. So also want to mention, unless you registered with in the last 15 minutes or so, you have access now to a Blackboard course that's just a sandbox. Gene Kleppinger was gracious enough to create 100 fake student users, and you can go in and do any of the things we talked about. You can access it. If you have trouble, let me know, but I believe I've added everybody, and there's no stakes there. So if you totally screw groups up, or even if you delete users, no big deal. I can fix that. And also, if you want your own copy of that to just play around by yourself, let me know. We'll get that created. But it also, if you look at the names, Gene took some liberties with historical and fictional names. So you may get a kick out of his mind map if you look at some of those student names. But you have a sandbox that you can leverage. If you want to open that up now, great. I wouldn't fool with it unless you are somebody that likes to follow along. Also, all the documentation is in this link. I'm going to send you this presentation at the end after we're done today. And if you click that, Blackboard is has done a really good job with documentation. 4 or 5 years ago, I couldn't claim that. Their documentation was terrible, but it's actually very good now. Take special care that you're not looking at Blackboard Ultra instructions. We have 2 LMSs now, or I consider them 2. We have Original and we have Ultra. Ultra is what they're currently working on. What I think in time, they'll try to gently nudge everybody toward. Maybe they'll nudge us kicking and screaming, but that's not anything to worry about now. Just make sure you're looking at Original View unless you do have your course in Ultra, which doesn't apply to very many people. So I've talked a lot in just a few minutes here. Why do we use groups? Who has ideas? Who has interesting applications that they want to talk about? Or I can just go on and present.
Well, in my role as a librarian, I don't teach specific classes like other faculty do, but I'm usually a guest in the classes, and I work with a couple different programs who have created groups, and I have used groups as an outreach tool, as a way to connect with the students and the faculty actually, and to be part of the conversation. And so I'm looking to see how I can leverage that into more, and to see what else I can do in groups and how I can use it to further that kind of activities. So
wonderful. Yeah, I mean, it's really, I've not been able to put anything faculty and staff have said outside of sort of these 3 main areas. We're either trying to organize our students or the activities and instructional experiences, and groups can help with that. It's an engagement tool, and I'll show you how you can maybe leverage it towards a little bit of engagement, or it's sort of delivering communications or materials based on group membership. If you have other ideas, I'm all ears, and there probably somebody is creative and has something that can cause us to have a 4th or a 5th category. But for me, groups do these things particularly well, as long as we like using those tools and they fit in with how we want to deliver the instruction online. So I'm about ready to jump into Blackboard, and I'll show you how to do that. If you've never, is there anybody that's not had any Blackboard experience or just minimal Blackboard experience? You can raise a hand or shout out or something like that. Blackboard's been around on this campus. What is it, Brad? 20 years, 21 years? A long time. I was
in that ballpark.
I was with one of the first cohorts that showed faculty how to use that, and that was 2000 or 2001. And it was like a 3-day workshop, and they fed them all like 2 meals and 2 snacks or something. It was like a big deal. And they even got a stipend for it too. It was back in the early Pleistocene era. But if we think about groups, there's really 2 main categories. There's the single one-off group. I'm making one group. I'm going to put my students or a group of a collection of students in this group, and they're either going to be able to self-select into this group. That's called a self-enroll, or I'm going to be able to choose who goes into that group. That's called a manual enroll. So that's the single one-off group. And you can do a single group and a single group and a single group and a single group ad nauseum. Then there is the group set. That's where I have a collection of groups, and I know the relative number of groups, or I know the number of students I'd like to be in each group. And I will either put them in myself, or they will self-select, or I will let Blackboard randomly assign my students into a group. And so there's various layers of complexity there depending on what you're wanting to do. So let's jump into Blackboard. If you've never logged into Blackboard before, I'll show you how. Can you all see the group sandbox management? No, it said sharing is stopped. Let me share the screen. And now I can't see chat. There. Okay, so you're seeing the actual Blackboard sandbox group for group management, or the class for group management that you all will use. I'm just going to back out and show that if we go to learn.eku.edu, I was surprised how many people don't know the process, and that's my That's my problem. I should always explain that. We're going to learn.eku.edu. We're clicking log in. And what I can't show you is, because it already knows me, is how to log in with your email address and password. And then you may have a two-factor authentication process set up where it wants to send you a code on your phone. That should be familiar to many people, maybe not all. Let me know if I can help get you logged in. So I'm already logged into the group management class sandbox, and I'm just going to go, I already have a groups tool link set up. And I would do that by hitting the plus and choosing tool link. And then I want to add the groups tool. And all that does is just jump you or your students into groups. That's all that tool links do in Blackboard. There are various tools that we can connect to. If you wanted to add one on the left side menu, you would select a tool link. Now, if it's just a URL like google.com, that's just a regular link. Some people don't know that either. Anyway, I'm going to groups or tools groups. And right now we have nothing. It's a blank slate. Your students will see in this area any group to which they have membership. It's possible to have a student in many more than one group. So you could have multiple groups. So at its essence, I'm just hovering over create, and you're going to see sort of a repetition of the table that you saw in my presentation. We're either doing a single group, you have two choices within single, or we're doing a group set, a collection of groups that are housed in sort of a set entity. Is everybody clear on that? Because that's confused a lot of people in the past, and it is kind of confusing. Notice that in a single group, we're just doing one, and we're either going to say, hey, you're going to self-enroll, you're going to self-select in these groups, or I'm going to manually enroll you. Why would we want to do self-select? Use your imagination. Marcia Pierce in biology had a wonderful exercise with a little media project that we did for our PD2 course. Our PD2 course is our professional development 8-week intensive course to show you some of the best techniques in online learning and teaching. And I'll be facilitating that. If you're interested, let me know. I'd love to have you as part of that cohort. But she was doing a unit on terraforming, and I guess different types of planetary landforms. And the students played the role of astronauts who were going to visit one of 3 planets with 3 different terraforms. And so they went through this presentation. It was not like a Warner Brothers movie, but it was pretty good and immersive. But the real magic happened is when they self-selected into these groups, she could manage the conversation in each group based on their terraform type, and she could push different content via the LMS to them. I'll show you how to get started in that. That's through adaptive release rules. It's the last thing I'll talk about, but you can hide or show content based on lots of different criteria in Blackboard, test score, or group management, or individual users for different reasons. So that's there. So you can have a single group where they manual or self-enroll. If I want to make a single group, I'm just going to click manual enroll. Now I'll name this group Singletons. Is the group visible to students? Probably it should be. And then the next thing we'll talk about here in just a minute is all the different tools that you can attach inside of that Blackboard group. Now, there's some things that we don't use, like I don't use content market tools. I really don't even know what that is beyond. I think you can link third-party software into your course and then have it link into a specific group. Tasks we don't often use, but you can use, but we use blogs to some extent. Group discussion boards in eCampus are used extensively. So what we'll do is, if you look at this regular generic discussion board, it are forums that any student in the course can see, whereas a group discussion board is a group of forums that only the members of that group can see. And a lot of times what we'll do is set up the discussion boards to be graded inside the individual groups. Facilitators will be assigned informally to a group. I can't mechanistically do that, but I can say, okay, Professor Jones, you're facilitator of the Jones group. And then they would grade those materials. So it's a useful tool, and it works just like regular discussion boards that aren't part of a group. We can use the ability to email everybody in our group. We can have a file exchange. It's not for assignment submissions, but it's more just, hey, I want to share this PDF with my group, or somebody wants to share something with the group. They don't want to do it in a discussion board. You can do that inside of groups. You can also set up Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, which is our video conferencing solution that I think is probably the best thing if you don't have a full Zoom license, because it's technology that we support and we can, it's embedded in every course. So it's just easy to access compared to maybe Microsoft Teams or Google Hangouts, or you don't want to do a 40-minute Zoom or whatever they're giving away for free. So when we have all this set up, I'm going to not allow personalization because students can change the color of how the group looks. I'm just going to go down to membership and start adding users. What happens is we get a pop-up window. Can everybody see the pop-up window? And then all I do is just start selecting the users I want into this group. You can do a search based on username, last name, first name, or you can just run through the pages. Notice we have 5 pages of students. I'm not going to run through all of those. Then we click submit. So there's our group. We hit submit, and we have a group called Singletons. It is not part of a group set. There are 6 enrolled members. It is not self-enroll, and it is available to them. Does that make sense? That's like the lowest. You could do that 4 times. And if you have a small number of students in your online section, that's fine. If you need something more complex, if you need multiple groups, if you want to be able to manage different aspects of those groups, then we need to be looking at a group set. Any questions before I show that? So we're kind of at that base level. So if you were good with that, if all that makes sense to you, then we can do some more intricate things. So now I'm going to hover over create and look at group set. So I can do self-enroll. I can make 15 groups right now. I can name them creatively, and I could just leave it at that and say, students, if you go to groups, you will see the ability to sign up for 1 or more groups. Now, the more you have, the more complicated it's going to get. What we often see in eCampus is we want to divide our very large section into groups, and the nursing faculty that I've worked with, they want that done by time zone and geography, because they have students, we've had some before that lived in Hawaii. And so what they're trying to do for study purposes, for availability purposes, to pair a facilitator who lives in the same or close to the same time zone as students, so that they can study and collaborate, communicate with a little bit more immediacy, if you will. So that's one big use. Other uses, let's say we have a writing intensive course, and the topics that the faculty want the students to write on are fairly limited, but they want a robust discussion. So they may have 5 students or 6 students per group, so that there's not repetition of the subjects or the topics in a group, and that there can be a robust sort of more intimate discussion. Those are 2 possibilities. You can think of many more. So I'm going to go down and do a random enroll. I'm going to call this group set random. You will see there's a description. Sometimes it's good to fill in that description. You will see all of the same tools that are available for the Singleton group. They're still there. They're the same. And I usually get rid of content market tools because I don't know what that does really. Never messed around with it. I don't typically allow personalization because I don't want a pink background when I go into the groups. That generates faculty questions. And now we're to the membership. You can determine the number of groups by how many groups you want or how many students you want in a group. So there are over 100 students in this particular sandbox. Let's say that I want 8 students per group. Then it asks me, what do I want to do with the remaining members? Because there will almost always be a remainder. I usually just say distribute the remaining members amongst the groups. As soon as I do that, it's going to make me the number of groups that it is necessary to form 8 students per group. That's automagical. If you don't need to think about who needs to be in which group, you're essentially done with that, with your task as soon as you hit submit. Notice now, I have 13 groups. I have 12 that are random, and I have my 1 singleton. Now, you will have to go in and rename these groups if you want to assign them to facilitate. Well, you don't have to if you want to assign them to facilitators, but what I typically do is rename that group name to the facilitator's last name. And sometimes we'll have Dr. Jones will need to give me, need to be responsible for 3 or 4 groups, depending on how many students in the group and depending on how many are assigned to him or her based on enrollments. But then you go in, you click on the group, you will see who is a member of your group. You have access to all of the tools. So let's talk about the tools for a minute, unless we have any questions. How am I doing on pace? Am I going way, way too fast? I'm seeing shaking of heads saying I'm not going too fast. If I am, please slow me down. Please stay after the presentation and I'll work with you on anything, or email me or call me later. I like helping faculty. That's the reason they keep me around too. And they keep paying me, so that's even better. So if I wanted to start a collaborate session or create a collaborate room, so students could jump in here at their own convenience, all I have to do from within this group is click collaborate. And join room. And this is automatically, and it may, I'm not going to accept the microphone or any of that stuff because I don't want it maybe to mess with what's going on with our Zoom session, but they're automatically in the random 1 collaborate room. That's automatic. Now you can go back and set.
Quick question. Does a group have to be attached, for lack of a better word, to a particular class in Blackboard? Or
no, sir, it does not have to be.
Okay.
What we can do is go back. I'm going to go to tools real quick because I don't have a tool link. So I'm breaking out of groups just for a second. If you're following along as the home audience, and if I go to Collaborate Ultra, where is it? So there's my tool, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. Remember, if you want to create a quick link for students, you could come and hit the plus, click tool link, and say, whatever you want to say. But if you don't tell them that the tool's called Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, even though that's a big long name, and they call the help desk and they need help, there may be a little bit of confusion. But then I'm just coming down here to Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, making that tool link available. And that way students don't have to go to tools. There's all kinds of tools here. Some faculty even disable the tools link because there's just so much. But so if I do video conferencing here or Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, it's going to go to the same place. Now, what I need to do, and yeah, so what's happening is right now by default, there's only 1 course room. What you can do, Brad, is click create session, and then you can make 1, 5, 100, I don't know about 100, but you can make a bunch of different rooms. I typically give faculty in the courses I used to support three rooms, and I may just call this free room or whatever. And then you come down, this is a little bit of a sidetrack, so tune out if this isn't important to you all. I will just say no end to this session. So it's open completely. Early entry, that's fine. And then I'm going to hit my gear icon here. And the default attendee role, I would probably make them moderator. Just give everybody open access to the room as much if they want to share their screen or whatever. These are the permissions. They're also checked. Just make sure about that. If you want to allow them to record downloads, that's fine. We haven't had a problem with file space in that regard. Everything we do and put on these servers is subject to kind of a metering. They charge us rent for our digital assets, as if the $300,000 a year or whatever we're paying isn't enough. They charge us for file space on these servers. So you can allow recording downloads, and you can anonymize chat messages if you want. That's more of a security issue. If somebody's being abusive, it might help to know who said what. Can they do privately? Can they privately chat with moderators? And then if you go to attendees, you can get reports. But that's, so you've got these basic settings. You hit create. That's your free room, and save.
So basically you're using that as the anchor instead of the course.
That's right. Or instead of a group. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can do it both ways. I mean, there may be students, outside of the auspices of a group that want to get together. And why do I like this? I mean, the students could do whatever on their own. We support this, we pay for it. So we have some reasonable expectation of getting help if there's a problem. With Zoom I prefer Zoom, frankly, just because I'm familiar with it. It's easy for people to join. It doesn't seem to drop if we have packet loss or if there's an internet speed problem. It seems to just fare better. But this does fine. It does better for me than Teams. I've had a lot of problems with Teams, although I think that's where we're going. I think Microsoft will eventually rectify their connections problems. And Teams does more than just the video conferencing too.
Right.
Well, that's Ultra in just a super quick nutshell. If you want to get some practice with it, let me know. I'd love to practice with you, help you in any way I can. I'm going to go back to groups.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
No, this is what I want, because this is what other people are going to ask too. And I'll have Jonathan Sikora probably present on it sometime. So that's collaborate under groups. The file exchange is very simple. You can add files. You can have the students add files if you just want to add a file. Lord knows what I've got in this menagerie of madness. There's an Excel or a CSV file that I was messing around with earlier, and I can give it a name. This could be a reference. I wouldn't do, and we're not really supposed to, right, Brad? Put a lot of academic printed materials or PDF materials in this way. We want you to be linking through the library's ability to provide that web access. I don't, what's the right term for that, Brad? I know what I mean, but I don't know what the right term is.
Oh gosh.
It's like a permanent link to the resource via KU libraries.
That's it, permanently.
And we want to be using those persistent links to resources to avoid copyright infringement problems. So, but other files, and sometimes there are cases where you need to send this PDF. There's no other way to get it. And I off the record, sort of, I understand that. But this is a way to share files with that group. If you want to share files, or if we're talking about readings or things that need to be part of the course, that's a little bit different thing. You could set up blogs. You could set up discussion boards. That gets kind of involved, so I'm going to not cover that a whole lot. But the group discussion board should function very similarly to the discussion board that's part of the regular course for everyone. You can make forums. You can set the access rules. You can establish grading. The only thing I would say is if you're going to have grading as part of your group discussion boards, there's some things I would show you depending on what your use case is. So if you're going to be using discussion boards inside of a group and you want to make the Grade Center track it, let me know, because there's some things I'd tell you depending on how many groups and how many discussion boards, because it's going to make a Grade Center column for every forum that you say needs to be graded. So let's say you have one assignment, but you have 15 groups. So you're going to have 15 discussion board or Grade Center columns for that one assignment. And that can be really unwieldy. So there's a kind of a way around that. Journals, wikis, all the same as they are. If you're interested in journals and wikis, that's something we cover a lot in PD2 and have lots of documentation and how to use that built in. Our PD1 is a self-paced Blackboard course. If you're interested in either of those, please let me know. And sending email. It's a quick way to send email to, oh, we're getting this notification because these are all fake accounts. If these had actual valid email addresses attached to them, that we could send everybody in this group an email message. And sometimes that's a little easier. So those are the tools that are inside the groups, whether it's a singleton group or whether it's a group as part of a group set. Okay, I'm going to go back to my group set that I created, and I'm going to show you some things. One thing I want to show you is that you can graphically manage the students in these groups. And if you look in the upper right corner, you will see all groups, group sets, and all users. Faculty, as an instructional designer, when I had that role, would ask me, what group is Jane in? Or what groups is Jane in? Or I'm having trouble getting Jane to participate in the groups. And all I have to do is verify that. I go to all users, and this gives me a total account of the student and the groups that he or she is assigned to. How do I know that? I'm looking, so I clicked on all users, right? And then I find their either sort by first name, sort by last name, sort by username, make sure they're a student, and then I see the groups that they're in. Notice that somebody can be part of more than one group. If I wanted to add them to another group, if I'm just doing it one time for one student, it's real easy. Add to group, I could add them to another group. Now that student is part of 3 groups. This is not common, but it can be useful, especially if you have groups based on interest. They can self-select into groups, and then sort of that becomes their responsibility. If you have information that you want to push to one group, or you have content you want somebody to see within the auspices of course based on group membership, then they need to manage themselves. But you can get involved here. So it's relatively straightforward to manage that. If I wanted to put a number of students into one group, I could check them on the left, add multiple users to groups. And it's only one for one. They say groups, that should say add multiple users to group. So I can put all of these people also in random group 3. Hit submit, and that happened. For some, this is very tedious. If you love Excel, and not everybody does, but if you love Excel, there's a way to download a CSV spreadsheet and manage groups that way. Or you can get yourself a nice roster that you can gussy up and use without logging into Blackboard. And this is one of my favorite things to do. I'm going to go to all groups. And then I'm going to see an export feature here. Exports on the right. Now, this is a circuitous little set of steps. So realize what's possible, and then let me help you if you want to do it for yourself or you're having trouble. And it's not, it's complicated because it's complicated. It's not complicated because people don't use this. It's just a weird feature. So I'm going to hit export. What am I going to export? Now, I'm not exporting like core stuff. It's really just roster material. Groups and group members is what I want to export. I'm going to include a header row with that. Then I'm going to hit submit. Now it says that action's been queued and an email will be sent to you when it's complete. That's the not fun thing about this process, is that you have to wait for this thing to generate an email that has the link that you click on and then go and get your file. So it's kind of, you would like for it just to appear here in the interface, but it doesn't. So I'm going to go over to my email and I'm going to wait around. Can y'all see my email window? Can you see email, or are you still seeing that other screen? Okay, good. So we're waiting around here, which is not my favorite thing to do. And with the new Outlook, we have two different windows. We have a focused window now, which I think you can disable, and we have other. So it may be in either of these. And it may take more than just a minute. Last time I did this a few months ago, it took about 4 minutes, which is fine if you're just waiting around. But when you're trying to do a presentation, I guess I should have done like the talk show, variety show cooking segment where we already have the potatoes baked and all that stuff. Oh, I could go find an old one, I guess, if I really wanted to. I think it must queue once a minute or something like that. Let me see if I've got an old one, because there's nothing more uncomfortable than dead air. There it goes. Is that it? Yeah, there we go. Well, never mind. So, because I want to show you what this email looks like when it comes in. So it just says bulk export complete and a link that says here. Now, if you click that and your default browser is not the browser you're logged in at, it's going to make you log in and then click it again, and that's a pain. I'm going to right click this and copy that hyperlink, come back over to Firefox where I'm already logged in, and I'm going to paste that big old URL right in the search bar. And it's going to ask me if I want to download this file. Now, that's a real ugly looking file name. First of all, it's a zip file, but you'll notice in the center of it, it gives the course ID. So for me, it's 5_groups_practice_clone. For you, it would be something like ENG 101. You would see the course ID and the CRN as part of this file name. So I'm just going to hit OK. And I'm going to come and open the folder. Here's my zip file. I want to double click. And then we've got two different CSV files, and we've got some text files that don't do anything. You want to click on the group members. And that's going to open up in Excel as a comma separated values file. Now, I'm not going to run through this unless you want. If you want to see it in action, I will, but it's just some extra time, and we're going to run up on time here in a minute. But basically what you have, group code is the group name. So we have random 1, random 10, and this _GC_ is just Blackboard's way of designating a space. Here's the username. Here's the student ID where applicable, first name and last name. If I wanted these folks from group 10 to be maybe part of group 1, all I have to do is change this. So I'm copying GC10, and I'm going to come over here and highlight GC10, and I'm going to paste. If I save that and re-import it up into Blackboard, it's now going to switch those folks to group 1 instead of group 10. Does that make sense? You don't have to mess with this if you don't want to. What I like doing is going ahead and saving this as an Excel spreadsheet. So I'll do save as, make it an Excel workbook, and call it my course list with groups. And now I can just click one cell inside these series of columns, go to insert, and then table. My table has headers. And now I've got a nice little roster, and I can filter that roster. So let's say I could even rename, these groups into random or whatever. But if you already have them named, then the name will come along when you do the export. Let's say I just want to see everybody in group 1 right now. So there's everybody in group 1. So if you like Excel, if you like fooling with Excel, It's just an easy way to get your roster where you don't have to log in with Blackboard all the time. Some people have told me they like that feature. Questions about that? Let me show you a really easy to use feature, or I don't know about easy, but it's fairly straightforward. It's called Smart Views. Does anybody use Smart Views in any context in online? If we have just a 10, 15, 20 student course and we go to Full Grade Center, we're going to see our 15, 20 students in this one series of rows, and we're fine. The problem, we have a problem when we have 100 students, because we're going through so many, and very, very often these large section online courses have facilitators, and a facilitator doesn't necessarily care about looking at all 100 students in the Grade Center. They just want to be able to come over here and look at their students. That's what Smart Views do. They allow us to filter based on lots of different criteria, but we most often use them in groups. So what I'm going to do is create those. First of all, I'm going to get rid of these old assignments here. And so I'm going to go up into Manage, Smart Views, and I'm going to get rid of all these old random groups that I created some time ago. When I do this, this doesn't get rid of the students. It just gets rid of the filter, gets rid of the Smart View. All right, now I'm going to go back into groups. And let's say I want to make Smart Views for all the groups, or it could be just a few groups. So I'm going to just check those. And then I'm going to mouse over bulk actions. Be careful, because this is where the delete group feature lives. And not a big deal if you've just created a random group set really quickly, you can do that again. But if you've done work on the groups already, like had discussion boards in them, or done some moving around of students, and you've got things like you want them, it's a real pain to recreate all that, and we can't get it back. So I'm going to click Create Smart View for Group, and it did that. Now, but there's nothing under Grade Center yet. So I need to go under Full Grade Center and go to Manage, Smart Views. There are my randoms. And I'm going to click Add to Favorites. So I'm mousing over Favorites, Add to Favorites. Boom. Now under Grade Center, you'll see Full Grade Center, which is everybody, or just that random group. And that's just the students. So the facilitator, as long as they're careful, can grade based on this random group. When they run through all of them, they need to be careful that, you know, once we're done grading Lewis York's work, we need to stop, because it's not supposed to, but it may go on to other students. So it's just a good way for giving facilitators the ability, or others the ability, to focus on the Grade Center relative to that one group. Questions about that? Okay, one more thing, and this is sort of the more advanced use case. So let's say a lot of us have weekly lessons and assignment section, and we segment our content based on week. Some people do it based on units, but we typically at eCampus do it based on week. That's just kind of, it's cutting the ham in half. We've always kind of done it that way. So I have two folders right now. I have Team Maroon and Team Gray. And let's say I want to take half of my groups and just let them see the Team Maroon content. I want the other half to see the Team Gray content. This is a good use case for this is when we have blended 500 and 700 level courses, and maybe you have different assignments, different reading materials for 700, then you do 500, or you have additional content that you really don't want 500 getting involved with for various reasons. Then you can create an adaptive release rule. And adaptive release can be used based on lots of different criteria. Score on a formative assessment. Let's say you have a 10 question assessment that is low stakes, but you'd like for them to answer at least 70% of the questions correct before they can see that content, you can set an adaptive release rule based on that criteria. Group membership is another way. So I'm just going to click on the context menu to the right of Team Maroon. I'm going to click and I'm going to go to adaptive release. Now there's advanced where you can nest conditions. So we've got to be, it's got to be during a certain date range, has to be based on group membership. So we can do our ands and ors in advance. But if we're just doing simple adaptive release with just one or maybe two criteria, we'll just do regular adaptive release. And we're going to base the access to this on membership. So right now, Team Maroon is a folder anybody can access. There's no criteria set on that. But if I want random 1, random 2 group, random 3 group to be conditions of that, and I hit the right arrow and select those and hit submit, now we've set up a release condition on Team Maroon. Now only somebody in Team Maroon can see that, and we have a kind of a vague notification here. That doesn't tell you a lot. I wish it told you a little more, because it would be good for the students can't see this message, but it says item is available, but some students or groups may not have access. And to find out what that is, then you could go back into adaptive release and look. But if you see this, if you see students complain and it's only maybe 1 or 2 students, and you go to the content area in question and you see this message, you can bet that that's the reason. And so, and often it's I didn't click a checkbox that I needed to click, or I didn't score high enough on this exam, and that's why I'm not seeing this folder. But right now, that's the release condition that we have. There are lots of different, I should probably do a unit on that, because we can really get, that's how we run a lot of our self-paced courses and experiences for faculty, especially with PD1, we have release conditions on it. Let me show you one more thing. Y'all had a question if you got it. And then we're actually almost past the 45 minutes. So I guess you can complain that I didn't deliver on my pizza promise there. I'm going to go back into groups, and I'm going to go to group sets, upper right corner. Notice that I have one group set because that's all I created. How many groups are in that set? 12. Is it self-enroll? Is the group set available? Yes. Let's say I made a goof and I need to make a change to all the, like say I want to add content market tools back to every group in this group set. I could go to all 12 groups and make that change. That's a real pain. Or I could come to group sets, hit the down arrow, and edit group set properties and make my change. It gets applied to all the groups. Let's say I did a manual enroll, like I'm in nursing. Nursing's got people that are taking classes in Texas. They've got them in California. We've got some people in Mountain Time, but we needed to add somebody or create another group to deal with, what's that weird? Is there a weird like not Mountain Time in Idaho or something? We need to make another time zone for that. I could come back in here to random and I could do edit group set membership. And I could do, where's that? I'm supposed to be able to add a group to it. Maybe it's at the bottom. Add group, all the way at the bottom for your inconvenience. So let's say I'm adding that, I'm adding that weird Idaho. I'm picking on Idaho. I invariably offend somebody just because I throw out a random state. Idaho is a perfectly good state. It's one of our many states in the union. So I'm adding that new group should I want to do that. And I think when I did that, it sent me back up to the top and I have to scroll all the way to the bottom again. Yeah. So here's random 13 and no students in the group. I would just go to add users it pops up another window. And then I have a criteria saying only list the users that aren't part of a group. Everybody's got group membership. So I'm not seeing any students, but that's where they would be if I needed to create another group. So that kind of helps you undo a goof that you may have made when you created the group set, or make a change to the tools that are available to the group, or if you want to add another group into the group set. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it today. What questions do you have? I hope this was a helpful session. There'll be a survey if you want to leave anonymous information and feedback. Lisa Brown got kicked out, I guess. I didn't see that.
Well, for me, it was kind of an eye opener as far as expanding my horizons, so to speak. I've only been using it as like a place where I can post announcements kind of thing.
Sure.
So there's a lot more. Basically, I could, like I said before, my role is as a guest in a lot of situations. So this would allow me to create something outside the course and not have to be worried about messing something up in the course, that sort of thing.
For sure. And use the sandbox. If you want a clone of the sandbox, by all means, it takes me, 3 minutes, 5 minutes to make one for you, or jump into this one. I don't care what you do. If it's too onerous, I'll just blast it away. But
I would like a sandbox if you don't.
Okay.
Mind. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll let you down for that, and we'll get it assigned, and you'll have access to all those weird and wonderful names that Gene Kleppinger created. And that, to me, that's the real. It's not that this is complicated. It's just that if you're working on it inside your own course, the stakes can feel a little, high, and you don't want to mess something up or have a student be left out until you really get your feet wet with it. And please don't hesitate to call me or email me. If you call me 8230 and you leave a voicemail message, it'll ping me in a kind of a special way, and I'll get right back with you. If you email me, I may get scrolled, or maybe a few hours before I get back to you. But if you're really stuck, of course, the help desk is great for that too. 622-3000, and they got people that know how to do all these things too. Or your instructional designer, if you're part of a eCampus course, they should be embedded in your course, and they should be able to know how to do all this stuff and take the pressure off you from fooling with it. You need to concentrate on the content a lot of times and being there for you.
That's one thing that I struggle with, and a lot of the library faculty struggle with. We try to be experts in everything outside our field.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of stress because of that, instead of relying on the experts that we have access to. So, yeah.
And I like helping, and I like getting paid to help. So, the more folks that utilize me, I think the better. And I think the library has that attitude as well. The more we're useful to people, the better we feel about it, because we're a service organization. If we're not helping, then something's wrong.
I always joke with people. I tell them that we're pathetically eager to help. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what questions do you have? If it's not about groups, I can talk about something else if you want, or you can stay on the line and we can talk later.
I just really needed, I've used Blackboard as a student, but this is my first time as an instructor. So I just needed some basics on how to work some things.
Mhm.
And I know Lisa that was on here too, we're both clinical educators in the College of Education. And so kind of new to Blackboard being on this side of it. You mentioned there was a self-paced course, and I was wondering where to find that.
Yeah. So idc.eku.edu/PD1. idc.eku.edu/PD1. I don't know if that may not be clickable, but if you'll go there, you can register for it. That pings me. It actually sends me an email. So I'll go ahead and try to. The reason I want that is because I want your email username, because that's
Sure.
how I have to add you. And I think you're Baker AN.
Yep.
I think.
Yes.
So I added you this morning. Let me just make a note of that.
And there was several of us that were new. And like I have talked to a couple of them, and they're like, oh, well, let us know how this session goes. And I guess I didn't read I saw basics and I thought, okay, I'll get some basics too. But the group thing was interesting because I do want to be able to sort my kids sometimes by elementary, middle, and high type thing. So I did take some notes, and I feel pretty good. I thought that was pretty simple. I'm hoping everything else will be too.
Well,
but I just need some basics, because I tried just to change my banner and I followed the directions step by step, and I'm not, you know, I'm an older person, but I am pretty tech savvy. It failed miserably. So I just wanted to get some more, you know.
I would love to have you, I'm going to end the recording